Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where we are super excited to have longtime friend and the newly appointed head football coach at Poston Butte High School, Rod Holmes, on the show this week. Going to talk some defensive scheme. So we're really excited to have Coach Holmes on. I've known Coach Holmes for close to 20 years, I believe. Maybe even 20 exactly this year, 19 or 20. But it's been a long time. I had the privilege of coaching with him, an outstanding football coach, been the defensive coordinator the last multiple years at Poston Butte, helping them to a state championship, multiple league titles, state playoff appearances, also coached at Dobson High School, Buckeye, was the head coach of Mojave High School, and is, like I said, the newly appointed head coach at Poston Butte High School, and will certainly continue to take the Broncos to great heights. They've been one of the better programs in all of 4A, I would say, over the course of the last 5 to 6 seasons. They've certainly done an excellent job. So we're excited to talk some ball with him, maybe talk some practice planning, some defensive stuff, all those type of things. But before we get into that, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show is brought to you by School Funder. School Funder, the only online fundraising company in America that lets you keep all of the money your team earns, minus the small 3% processing fee. So I would encourage you, we used School Funder, made $12,000 in a very short period of time, and we kept all of it, minus that 3% processing fee. Many other companies would charge you upwards of $2,000, even $2,500 to use their fundraising system. Well, not with School Funder. You wouldn't give away 20% of the wins your team earns, so why do you give away 20% of the funds your team raises? So I encourage you, schoolfunder.org, that's SCHOOLFUNDR.org, and let them know the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show sent you. All right, so getting into this, Coach, and I know a little bit about this. You're a Red Mountain Lion product there, Roar Lions Roar, but tell us a little bit about your football story.
Yeah, so I grew up actually idolizing my dad. My dad was a Mountain View Toro, of all things, and he was a pretty successful athlete there at Mountain View. He's actually inducted into the Mountain View Athletics Hall of Fame a few years back, and just loved football growing up, and just wanted to play, and finally got an opportunity when I was a freshman and start playing football and stuff like that. And as a player, I was a undersized guy, and just loved being around my teammates and things like that. And didn't parlay it into a college playing, but I was fortunate to decide to switch my major once I got into college, to go into history education and coaching. And I was very fortunate to latch on early. The first year Skyline was open, and went over there with Mark Schwartz and Coach George Delatorre, who were my previous coaches. And during that time, I was able to latch on with Bobby Barnes, who was at Buckeye, and we kind of made a connection. And basically been coaching since I was like 21 years old, and I was lucky to get a chance to do some of those things. And basically have just been blessed to be able to be a part of the game for as long as I have. And I really just enjoy it because of the development of kids and helping young men become better fathers and, better adults. So, I mean, nothing too exciting, just, a guy who kept a love for the game to keep chugging along, and still haven't lost that love or that zest. I still enjoy what I do every day.
Well, it is a great job. I think it's one of the better jobs out there. Getting the opportunity to be a high school football coach, Friday Night Lights, I believe are very special. And before we talk about defensive system, one last reminder, please like and subscribe, folks. We pushed ourselves over the 100 subscribers list, but we'd like to continue climbing that and reach more coaches. So always, like I said, Coach, I've always had great respect for you. Obviously, when I got the job at Poston Butte for 1 year, you were the first guy I called to bring over. And would love to, hopefully, one day before our coaching careers end, we'll get a coach together again, because I always enjoyed coaching with you. You were always a outstanding football coach, extremely knowledgeable, great relationships with the kids, always did a good job bringing in a lot of stuff. Your kind of positive energy was infectious throughout multiple programs. But talking about defensive system, because you've been a guy you've called offenses, called defenses. What do you think is most important in determining your defensive system, whether you're an odd front, even front, what have you? I am of the thought process that there's really everything can fall into what I would call one of four, or I guess you could go six if you want to include bear front. But odd split, what most people call 3-4. Odd stack, what most people will call 3-3. Even split 4-2, 4-4, whatever you want to call it. Even stack 4-3. Everything can kind of fit into one of those families defensively, but there's certain advantages, disadvantages to each system, whether you're 4-man front, 3-man front, whatever you want to do in that capacity. But what do you think is most important in determining your defensive system?
Well, I mean, for me, being a guy who just loves the game and loves the X's and O's, we've kind of basically we had a base defense that was kind of the old Blue Ridge defense that was passed on, and we kind of kept some of those concepts when I took over from the defense from Coach Thompson, and basically I tried to evolve it in a way that we could be multiple fronts. So, the 3-4 was kind of always been our baby, but we kind of fiddled with everything. And a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that there's value in all those systems. And, I just felt like if we were able to marry some of those different fronts together and be able to run some of those multiple fronts, it would allow us to adjust every year to our athletes. You know as well as I do, especially in 4A football, you don't always have that prototypical outside linebacker. You don't always have that prototypical kid that, your safety has the same physical traits year in and year out. So you want to try to, build those fronts and to the strengths of the kids that are your dudes on your football team. So I think for us, the last few years, it's been able to, kind of jump in some different fronts and move some guys around, which early on was really hard for us to do because you're trying to marry different things. But we were fortunate. We found a way to kind of marry the terminology so that we could run a lot of different fronts. And then it gets fun in games too, because then as a defensive coordinator, if you can move guys around and show different looks, I think it's really advantage for the defense for, confusing the offensive lineman on run blocking and stuff like that.
Absolutely, Coach. I've talked about this with a lot of coaches. If I was ever an assistant again, I don't think I'd have a problem. But the issue I would probably have the most concern, I wouldn't say concern, but the most problem with is not having control of the practice plan. I could be a part of any offense, any defense, but I want to be in charge of the time, because I've definitely been a part of staffs where it said Indy was going to be 10 minutes and then it was 30. So that part would frustrate me. So walk us through typical practice plan. You were talking about recently hired a really outstanding offensive coordinator from Perry High School. And those of you that are anybody listening that's from out of state, Perry's a big, huge 6A school, probably 3,000 kids on campus, somewhere in that neighborhood. Poston Butte, good, solid number 4A school, but I want to say around 1,500 in that area. So coming from that 6A, it was a little bit of an adjustment because he was having 2 hours with all those guys are just doing offense. Now, the 4A level, everybody's kind of practicing both. So walk us through a typical practice plan, primarily from a defensive perspective, but just give us a holistic idea of what your practices look like, number of periods, time, where you're doing that, how many coaches, all those type of things. I know you guys have kept 3 levels, practice varsity and JV together, I'm assuming, like we do, or do you have it as a separate entity? Walk us through a typical practice plan.
Yeah, absolutely. We always we've been doing half an hour classroom time. As well as I do, it's hard to keep kids' attention for a long period of time in a classroom setting. So we try to keep it to half an hour or less. Chalk talk, film, whatever, and then we go out in the field and we kind of we kind of ease into practice. We do a little pre-practice stuff for about a half an hour. That gives kids time to jump into the trainer and get taped if they need to. But kids get out there, they kind of start throwing routes, doing, quarterback center exchanges, um, just some pre-practice routine type stuff. And then once practice time starts, we go with a little focus period where we do the jumping jacks, right? You spell out Broncos and try to get kids to start and stop on time, that kind of thing. So we go through that little quick period, and then we get a dynamic stretch in groups. From there, usually we try to do something fast-paced, competitive, to kick off practice, whether that be 30-yard races, guys that if you win, you move up a group. You lose your last one, you got to move down a group. Just different competitive races and things like that to kind of get the juices flowing at the beginning of practice. And then from there, it just depends. I mean, if we're a little more, I kind of try to balance it out. We might do a tackling circuit, or a ball handling circuit and a lineman skills circuit or something for like 10 minutes. And then from there, usually we try to do, this, depending on the time of year. Obviously, this time of year, we want to do a little bit more individual work and position drills, but usually 10 to 15 minutes for indie work, whether that's for NDO. When we, again, trying to balance everything, we try to do a lot of group stuff where we're able to work on both sides of the ball.
So, Coach, want to thank you so much for joining us. Always love getting defensive guys on there to talk some ball, and obviously you have a well-rounded experience on both sides of the ball, but certainly appreciate you sharing some knowledge with us this week. Anybody, by the way, that is would like to be on the show, you can contact me at cody.collette@prescottschools.com, or you can follow us also on Twitter at Blue and Gold Gridiron Show. But we appreciate your time, Coach, and wishing luck to the Broncos again this season. And we will see you next week on another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show. Thanks a lot.